Thank you again. Thank you for coming today. My name is Jin. I'm very excited to host a TikTok Cultures in Korea today. This is a TikTok Cultures Research Network's 10th event. So we are very, very excited to have you here. TikTok Cultures in Korea Symposium is brought to you by TikTok Cultures Research Network and supported by McCarthy here at Curtin University in partnership with the Korean Research Engagement Center in Western Australia, and organized by Professor Abidin and Janey Umback, Faye, Mercier, and myself. You can also access to the full program and abstracts and bios here at TikTok Cultures Research Network's homepage. First of all, please welcome to Professor Simon Forrest. Welcome to country.
Kaya Wandu. Hello and welcome. My name is Simon Forrest Burungu. I'm a Wajak Baladong Noongar with kin connections to Yamaji and Wongai peoples. I am of this land and place. I follow a bloodline of people who have walked and cared for this land for over 40,000 years. This is a welcome to country, a welcome to Wajak Noongar Buja. A welcome to country recognises and acknowledges us and the first and continuing custodians of this land, Australia. Nidya Bolo, Nidya Gungungap, Nidya Maragarap, Nidya Mindarap. Kaya Wandu, Nan Kwel, Simon Forrest Burungu. Kaya Wandu Nidya Wajak Noongar Buja, Nal Karich Noongar Mod, Ken Karat Nidya Buja, Nan Karich Noongar Kabali, Borankoriye.
Thank you, Professor Simon. It was my great pleasure to have you all here. Firstly, TikTok has just a little bit of housekeeping. Presentations are being recorded for uploading on tiktokcultures.com, and Q&A and chat box will not be uploaded. And for panelists, please ensure that your mics and videos are muted until it is your presentation slot. And for attendees, you're welcome to use the Q&A function to ask presenters and questions. And also for those of you who have Twitter accounts or now X accounts, you can also access our live tweeting on Twitter and X. Again, TikTok Cultures in Korea, it is my great pleasure to host this symposium. Our team have put a lot of efforts to program and make this event possible. TikTok Cultures Research Network has started as a very small community in 2020 here based in Curtin University. And over the past few years, it has developed as one of the most rigorous and vibrant research community with a lot of scholars across the globe with their innovative and very insightful research ideas about different aspects and different areas of the TikTok cultures. One of the ethos that we have is that we always prioritize the globality and also challenge the Western-centered perspectives. And you can see our history track record of the special issues that we have published, such as TikTok cultures in the Asia-Pacific region, and also TikTok cultures, TikTok and social movements. And also we have hosted a series of seminars and events over the past few years. including TikTok and social movements, TikTok cultures in the Asia-Pacific region, TikTok and methodologies, and TikTok and Asian diaspora. And also we have collaborated with different institutions and hosted satellite events such as TikTok of Latin American cultures and digital economies and creators in TikTok on TikTok last year. And this is our 10th event, TikTok Cultures in Korea, as a continuation of our research trajectory and ethos of looking at different ideas and different perspectives across the globe, but also with the priorities and with emphasis of the Global South. TikTok is a very unique platform because of this unique algorithm that constantly fuels the region-based content and cultures, but also it is the platform where the hybridity is always highlighted because of the mix of the globality and also the regionality. And TikTok cultures in Korea is one of the prime examples that showcases that kind of very interesting and insightful hybridity between the globality and also the locality. A lot of you, many of you already know that Korean culture today is quite interesting in terms of the global popularity of the K-pop and also the Korean content such as K-film, what they call, and also the K-drama thing. But also we have a dark side and other interesting things that never been actually shed light on, such as the dark side of the Korean content or the socio-economic cultures of the Korea. And TikTok cultures or the platform TikTok are the platforms where different layers and different meanings always interact together and are reconfigured by multiple actors such as celebrities, K-pop stars, influencers, and just ordinary social media users. So TikTok cultures in Korea are the prime example that we want to showcase that how the globality and also the locality intersects together, and also how the different people across the globe are connected through the platform by engaging with this very unique, interesting aspects of the TikTok cultures in Korea. To showcase this very multifaceted meanings and layers in TikTok cultures in Korea, we programmed different things here to highlight the different aspects and different meanings here. The first, we started with the content creator of the Halfie project, Rebecca Rose. We are very, very excited to have her here. And also we are very looking forward to listening to her insightful thoughts about working as a content creator and also showing the dark side or different ideas of the TikTok cultures in Korea. Then we moved to the fireside chat, working with TikTok cultures, actually the ByteDance team here in Korea. And then we showcase the different ideas and research ideas developed by the global scholars, including TikTok cultures research team, and also different scholars across the globe. So yeah, you can see the all different tastes of the TikTok cultures in Korea, and we hope that this event is a stepping stone for global scholars to think about how the globality and locality intersects together on this exciting platform in TikTok. So now we are moving to the keynote speaker. Please welcome Ms. Rebecca Rose and also the moderator Professor Crystal Abidin.
Thank you, Jin. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to our keynote today. Those of you who have followed our events for some time will know that we often feature academic keynotes and at times also include practitioner keynotes. But today we're in for an extra treat because through longitudinal research, Dr. Jin Lee and I actually know Rebecca Rose's work very intimately. She is the creator and director of the Halfie project. She's also a mixed-race Korean voice actress, writer, and video producer who works between the US and Korea. We found her in her research about 3 years ago because we looked at a lot of contents where she was producing interviews with mixed-race Koreans from all around the world. And her insights in her interviews are really amazing. It goes beyond the superficial, looking at just skin tone or color, to talk about Korean experiences globally, to interrogate what identity means to individual people. And you can also see through her various contents that she uses multiple formats to facilitate these discussions about multiculturalism. I really do think we're in for a treat given Rebecca's background, not just as a practitioner, but also as a mixed race person who's had a lot of insight and care into her content. We're really pleased that her talk today is going to be focused on a personal story, the danger of telling your story. And without further ado, please help me welcome Rebecca Rose of the Halfie Project. Over to you, Rebecca.
Hello, thank you so much for that very warm welcome. Sometimes when I hear people talking about myself and the work that I do, it's almost unbelievable to think that I've actually done this and that there's actually people out there who are listening to what we're doing and watching what we're doing. Because if anyone has been following the Halfie Project for some time, you'll know it started out as a very personal project and it has grown far beyond myself, which I never could have expected. But we'll get into that a little bit with my simple speech today. But yes, as I was introduced, my name is Rebecca Rose. I'm also known as Becky. That's often how people have referred to me, especially in Korea. And I'm the creator and director of the Halfie Project, or also known as 혼혈 이야기. 혼혈 is a Korean term for mixed race or mixed blood, and 이야기 is talk or story. So this is the two names that we've been using for it. It's a digital media project that explores, archives, and shares the experiences of mixed Koreans, both ethnically and culturally, from all over the world. And we do this through photography, interviews, videos, writing, and ordinary conversation, just like the one that we're having today. I do think it is very important to utilize different mediums and different formats because, as we know, if we all use TikTok here, we can see that there are limitations. And that is some other things that I want to talk about today. So a few years ago, I sat down in a podcast studio with a guest whom I had met just a week before. We were strangers to each other. And as you do in a podcast, we started talking, lightly at first. Where did you grow up? Where's your favorite cafe in Seoul? And then more seriously, about culture, the differences we've experienced as half Koreans in Korea. And then, though I can't remember how the topic turned, we began to talk about how important it is to have parents who teach us how to accept ourselves fully as mixed Koreans. And she said, my dad used to blame me for being half Korean. He would say, a real Korean girl wouldn't have made these mistakes. A real Korean girl would be a good daughter. And because your other half is so bad and lazy, you're not keeping up. And I think, my guest told me, my dad never forgave himself for being with a non-Korean woman. The subcontext is, and having half Korean daughters. And I will never forget this moment, not because what she told me was shocking, because in reality, I hear these comments quite a lot when doing my project, sometimes said in less explicit terms, but we often understand the hidden intentions. And I'll never forget this moment because I suddenly realized how incredibly fragile these stories are. And for some unknowable reason, I was given permission to hold it. And I felt the weight of immense responsibility. And I asked myself for the first time, am I doing the right thing? In 2019, I posted the first video for the Halfie Project on YouTube. It was an interview between myself and a Black and Korean YouTuber named Cedric Skysetti. We had an open conversation about the nuances of being half Korean, one of us white, the other Black, but sharing the common factor of being Korean and living in Korea. It was one of the first times I felt so validated in my experiences. Here was someone who recognized the unspoken feelings I carried for so long and inherently understood, no explanation required. This is a very rare occasion when that happens in our lives. If that's ever happened to you, you'll know how that feels. And that interview was my first. And then after that, I found two incredible teammates through Craigslist of all places, which I do not always recommend, but it worked really great for me. And then they joined me in a whirlwind year of producing interviews, mini documentaries, and photo stories with half Koreans from all over the world: Egypt, France, the US, Pakistan, Australia. And like a magnet, I drew people to me. I was so eager to hear their stories and share them with the world. We grew our YouTube channel, then opened a podcast, and then Instagram, and next a TikTok account. And in those early days, my eyes were set on growing. Finally, it felt like we could tell our own stories, share our own experiences, not through the distorted lens of pop culture, stereotypes, or poorly remembered history, but with our own words. I was championing our truths. This is what it looks like to be mixed Korean from every corner of the world. I was shining a light on our stories, stories that I felt everyone should hear. And then she said to me, a real Korean girl wouldn't have made these mistakes. And she looked at me with a sort of smiling defiance that didn't quite hide the pain I saw in her eyes. And I wondered, as I looked at the microphone capturing her words and the camera in the corner recording her face, am I doing the right thing? The microphone and the camera are tools that magnify sound and image. What you say or you do, it becomes 10 times larger than life. They can turn one simple sentence into a PR disaster. A camera focused at the right moment can capture fleeting beauty and immortalize a moment of pure emotion. But it can also destroy relationships, threaten governments, and reveal things we might wish we had never seen. The camera and microphone magnify our stories, and if we are not careful, unveil ourselves to the public in a way that can get out of control very quickly. So I don't need to tell you all that the virality is the aim of the game when it comes to social media. TikTok has stripped away the previously high barrier between the ordinary and the famous. And we hold these two powerful tools, the microphone and the camera, right in our pocket. Now, everything and everyone can reach the whole world, and we do, through silly moments caught on camera, emotional punches pulled in 6 seconds, dramatic retellings, or elusive glimpses into another person's life. We have clever tricks and ways to hook an audience so that our reach grows and our platform gets bigger for whatever purpose you might have. But this is why telling our stories can be so dangerous, because it opens us up to the scrutiny of strangers. TikTok has made that incredibly easy. It has also made it easy to forget the power of our stories because we can now package them so neatly and context-free and reach so many people at once without a second thought. Stories come in all shapes and manner. Some are funny, some are sad, some are memorable, some are shocking. And despite what social media might promote, not everyone has a right to your story, especially when you're collecting the kinds of stories that I do. Not long after the Halfie project was launched, I got an interview with a young woman who had been part of the Unification Church, or the cult also known as the Moonies. And she had been closely affiliated with the higher-ups her whole life and had gotten married in one of those mass weddings, meeting her new husband for maybe the first or the second time ever on that day that she wore her wedding dress. He was Korean, she was not. They soon had a child and ended up living in Korea. And I didn't expect this interview to take me down a path that I'm still exploring today. This idea that there are many mixed Koreans who are the result of the cult's plan to spread the religion through arranging international marriages. I know it sounds like a big conspiracy theory, but we'll see. Well, we released this interview and it became our first viral hit. It reached over 500,000 views in a few months and we celebrated that. But then the young woman started getting threats from church members and her now ex-husband. And I learned that her daughter was being held by the father and his family as the mother had lost custody because she was a foreigner in Korea, divorced, working as a teacher, didn't speak Korean fluently, while the father had a family, Korean citizenship, and could express his side quite easily in the local language to the court. And I am biased, I'm sure. But I didn't feel that those reasons were good enough to take a child away from their mother. And we ended up having to take the video down. Because I had chased down this interview with pure intentions. And then now I had come face to face with the reality that putting this story out put this young woman at risk and at odds with her ex-husband. I wanted to give her a chance to share her side of the story, to talk about her unique situation in Korea, because there are many women in that situation. But instead, it revealed the sinister nature of a cult and the plight of single foreign moms in Korea. So I discovered that telling her story was dangerous too. I found it alarming that people could react so viciously to someone's lived experiences. I started wondering if the person walking by me on the street was a cult member out to eliminate anyone spreading so-called lies about their religion. Once someone said to me in passing, "Hail, blessed child." And I said, "Blessed by who?" "Oh," he responded, "I thought you were part of the Unification Church. All blessed children look like you." Like what? Like half Koreans? At the Halfie Project, we make it our priority to give our guests the freedom to share their own stories in as sincere and an unfiltered way as possible. And we really work hard to ensure that there's no angle or underlying opinion that we are pushing. And then we let people read and hear and see these stories. And the conclusions that they draw are far more telling about who they are than who we are. So the reactions to this video made me start asking, why would someone attack you for telling the truth? It also made me see more clearly the dangers of telling a story without full context. And the way social media is set up, TikTok in particular, is to capture attention in a short frame of time, and you are rewarded if you keep that attention. So for this reason, I've really wondered if it would be too risky putting these stories out on TikTok or Instagram because it didn't allow time for the proper context. Truth to be told, I used to be very skeptical of using TikTok for the Halfie project. On one hand, I knew I could reach far more people. On the other hand, I was worried that the nature of TikTok's algorithm and short content form would cut my stories in half, eliminate context. And while virality is a great thing as a content creator, it can also be like lighting a match to dry tinder. And I couldn't risk setting these valuable stories on fire in the name of growing an audience. After the Moonies video, the young woman recommended I reach out to some other single foreigner moms she knew who had half Korean kids, so I did. And that's when I learned how marginalized single moms are in Korea. I learned how little support they receive from the government, how difficult it is without family nearby, and often they are haunted by a vengeful or resentful ex-husband. And I saw the way Korean society looks down on these women. The level of social distaste differs depending on where they're from. Is she a Westerner, white, Black, Southeast Asian, pretty, overweight? Factors that might determine the way they're treated. And then I asked, what did some of these women do to support themselves and their children? And these questions led me to meeting with single women groups, looking into patrilineal laws in Korea, walking around red light districts, making posts on Craigslist, pretending to offer high-paying escort jobs, and then striking up email conversations with the women who responded, and trying to learn about their circumstances and why they applied to the position. This led me to migrant wives, immigrant workers, women trying to make money to escape abusive situations, and many times with half Korean kids somewhere along the way. So the deeper that I got into these issues, the angrier I got. And that's another disturbing reality about pursuing stories. It will shine an unforgiving light on things that you can't close your eyes to anymore. It's dangerous being enlightened to injustices happening around you, because after that, you just can never go back to ignorance. I made a video about my small investigation into these issues, and in return, I spent a few months reading some of the most unhinged, hateful comments I've gotten to this day. Because how dare I reveal the truth about vulnerable women living on the edge of Korean society? But I still believe that these stories reach someone, somewhere, who was ready to listen. Stories have a fantastic ability to change people's minds without force. They are one of the few things with that power. Yes, we can debate or persuade or threaten to get someone to see my point of view, but that doesn't change minds, not really. Stories grant the listener a snapshot into someone else's life. We give people the chance to try to understand each other without judgment, because we fear what we can't understand. But when we can understand, it inspires empathy and sometimes compassion. Compassion is the key to inspiring action, and it takes action to make a change. Stories connect us, they hurt us, they heal us, they change our perspectives. A single witness can sway a jury's decision from innocent to guilty. Stories are dangerous. This is why they get censored, blocked, deleted, especially when somebody is trying to hide their wrongdoings, because we all innately know how powerful stories are. This is why we use social media. This is why TikTok is so addictive. We use these platforms to share our stories and draw an audience to us through this power. And the more truthful they are, the more potent they become. When I first began the Halfie project, someone close to me told me very seriously, you shouldn't do this. The history of mixed Koreans is too painful, too difficult. You'll get into trouble. People just want to forget. And I brushed it off because I felt an almost righteous motivation to tell the world about the mixed Korean experience. But this person ended up being correct in a way that I didn't really expect. The further I dove into the history of mixed Koreans, I learned more about the aftermaths of war, the shadow of camp towns, adoption, political cover-ups, family secrets, and shame, things that I thought I was removed far away enough and cool-minded enough to explore without being affected. But it put me on a personal journey that has led me to trouble sometimes. And the pain that people want to forget, that's true too. Sharing these stories is dangerous because it will force you to realize truths that may be unpleasant, truths about your history, your culture, your family, and yourself. But that same person told me after watching some of our videos, perhaps you are doing the right thing. Telling these stories is dangerous in many ways, like I've shared, but it's not wrong to reveal true stories. It's all in how you handle the telling. That's what matters. I've learned a lot in the art of telling someone's story over the past few years and how to shape them according to the platform I am using, whether that is YouTube, through photos, or 30-second snippets on TikTok. The most important thing is respecting the integrity of the story, despite my personal feelings about it. One of the most common things we hear about our work is admiration for the way we present the stories in interviews without prejudice, or nationalistic bent, or flashiness. And this is something I'm really proud of because it's the result of learning to take myself and my opinions out of my work. And it's very hard, but I've been learning not to speak for others, but to let the stories speak for themselves. So I mentioned earlier that I avoided using TikTok for 혼혈이야기 for a long time because I was afraid of our stories getting truncated for the sake of trendiness. But that was a lot of my own judgmental mind about the platform. Because now I'm very fascinated by how different comments are depending on the platform we use. It's reflective of the people we are reaching. Though the actual heart of the content that we post on TikTok is the same as what might be found on our YouTube channel or Instagram, just shaped according to the platform's requirements, the responses we get are so different. Our viewers there are younger, oftentimes exhibit more passion, are more easily influenced, which can be a little scary to see, and are seeking connection over just entertainment. I've heard a lot that in order to be successful on TikTok, you have to be silly or beautiful or shocking. But ultimately, I believe the algorithm is driven by human nature. What are people drawn to? And if it is really stories, especially ones that reveal truths about ourselves that attract people, then it doesn't surprise me that the Halfie Project has found an audience on TikTok. My job is to respect the stories and experiences that we share. Every piece of content that we put out on TikTok is an opportunity to reach someone new. Human nature desires connection. Stories connect us. Stories inspire understanding, which inspires compassion, which inspires action, which inspires change. What a dangerous thing it is when we really realize the power to make a difference, whether for good or for bad, is right at our fingertips. A few months ago, someone that I interviewed back in 2019 informed me that his mother passed away from a brief and vicious battle with cancer. And one of the last things she did was watch our interview that we produced for her husband and her son. And she died happy, her son told me. We capture stories with a camera and with a microphone. The camera can shine a light on things long hidden, reveal secrets, retain memories, and bring people back to life. If it's for an hour-long film or just 30 seconds on a vertical video. Stories have a power of their own, and they will reach out to the viewer in ways that I may never have intended. I was interviewed by Humans of Soul about 10 years ago. They happened to meet me on the street as I was wandering around Yonsei University campus. And they asked if they could ask me a few questions and take my photo for their then Facebook page. And I was skeptical at first, but I figured, okay, why not? I remember at that time being very lonely, and somebody getting to know me was something I couldn't resist in my vacuum of human interaction. This was the first time that I publicly talked about being half Korean and some of the difficulties I had experienced. They took my photo, thanked me, and we parted. And I remember first feeling a sort of relief for getting those thoughts off my mind. And then the second feeling of being worried. How was I going to look to their many followers? Would they judge me? Did I express myself well enough? Fast forward about 5 years later, I met a half Korean girl from a South American country. She told me that she had come across my photo on Humans of Soul, when she was going through a hard time herself, wondering about her mixed Koreanness and where she fit in. And when she read my story, she said she felt comforted and inspired. She ended up moving to Korea in pursuit of higher education and to explore her Korean roots, where we somehow met, and she somehow remembered me from that picture. And she told me, "Your story really impacted me." I had shared a little bit of my own story out of loneliness and difficulty. And in some unexpected way, it resulted in connection and relationship. I mentioned earlier about our first interview with Cedric Skysetti, the Black and Korean YouTuber I met back in 2018. So we shared our experiences with each other. We captured it on film. We put it up on the Halfie Project. And 2 weeks ago in Seoul, we actually got married. And that's the danger of telling your story. It will connect you to others. And as I can attest, it can change your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. I'm sure around the world, wherever we are joining you in thanking you for telling this wonderful story. I've long known about your work, and it's no surprise at all that you're a wonderful storyteller. But I think through your sharing today, it's also so clear that care is built into every aspect of your practice, from whom you meet, to how you solicit their stories, to how you put it online, even thinking about the medium, the mode, the modality. So we're really grateful for your sharing. While comments and questions are streaming in through the chat function, I'm going to use my prerogative as chair to kick us off, if you don't mind. Now, I feel that we've had such an opportunity to hear from you, not just as a curator of content, but also as a creator of content. And you sort of have two hats that you wear. One, telling your own story, and the other, telling the stories of others through your perspective and your worldview. Can you tell us a bit about how you toggle between both worlds, and does that affect the contents you put out on TikTok differently? Do you do care differently, whether it's your story or someone else's that you're presenting to the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, it's a funny thing when you're trusted with somebody else's story. Like I said before, you do feel a bigger burden of responsibility. And I think that is why people are continually drawn to the Happy Project and continually willing to share their own stories. I think because, one, they see my own sincerity, I guess, when I share my own, and then the care that I give to others when I share their stories. And I definitely feel more responsibility when it's somebody else. And it's for myself, I'm actually, even though I work in the entertainment industry and even though we do the Happy Project, I'm a very private person, and it has been a very personal struggle to speak up and share bits about my own life and my own story. But I think that's kind of how it begins. And I also think this is why when it comes to sensitive topics, like for us with Happy Project, this is why it's been difficult to uncover these stories or find people who are willing to speak about it, because it is so intensely personal and very, very painful. And there's a lot of social burden that comes with a lot of this history and a lot of the experiences that people have. And so by myself sharing my own bits and pieces and experiences first, it almost like gives people permission to be part of that and to jump in and to share their own. I mean, we see that's like the nature of virality on Instagram or TikTok or social media, right? People see someone else do it. Oh, I want to do it too. And it gives you permission to jump on it. Maybe that's more lighthearted, but I feel like the concept is very similar when it comes to sharing the stories that we talk about on Happy Project. Yeah.
That must be very generous, but also maybe sometimes terrifying to use yourself as the starter dough to change the conversation. And we know on TikTok from our research that a lot of the virality is often driven by popular culture, K-pop specifically, whereas your content tries to shuttle people through the lens and the tunnels into another side of Korea. How has that journey been like for you, trying to break through, so to speak, into mainstream TikTok culture in Korea?
Yeah, I did think that we weren't going to be, I didn't think that we would be able to gather an audience on TikTok, but I think that as I have been exploring it more and also experimenting with some of our own content on the platform, it really does draw me back to that original point that even though TikTok has this character or like this idea that it's only about pop culture or dance or beautiful people or makeup and beauty, I do still think it is driven primarily by just human nature, the desire to connect and people seeing themselves in someone else's story. And I think that's where Halfie Project shines. So we are a little niche, but even without trying, people are drawn to it. And that is, I think that's the thing that I have always worked with Halfie Project, is not to push to be trendy, because trends will pass or fade away. And the people who will find us. And it grows very naturally in that way.
We are in a room full of researchers who nerd out about TikTok and spend a lot of time studying digital culture in Korea. I've got a comment through DM. I'm going to rephrase the comment as a question for you. I think this person would like to know a little bit more about what sort of research academics like us can do in order to help the work that you do.
Man, this is such a tough question, because I jumped into the Halfie Project, like I said before, on a very personal beginning. And it was kind of just like my own desire to get something out of me, and just to see, is there anyone out there in the void who has any connection with what I'm saying? Is it just me? I'm going crazy. Can anyone help me? And I mean, in reality, that's kind of how it began. So this is what I mean. Like, it's very anecdotal. And it started that way. And then slowly, whether I intended to or not, it's become quite a data collection. Ultimately, it is just a lot of stories, people's experiences in a very honest way, and we've been collecting it. And so it's kind of turned into data, whether I intended it or not. And the thing that I've realized while I've been doing this is how little academic focused data there is out there. And sometimes I feel like the work that I can find about mixed race Koreans in particular sometimes comes at a certain angle that people are trying to push, or sometimes it's always concerned about the war, Camptown shadows, these kind of things. But there is a whole new generation of mixed Koreans today. And I do think it's very closely tied as well to the globalization of Korea and the growing diversity of the population. And so it would be really nice to see more, I guess, more research on that, instead of a pure focus only on uncovering old stories from the war. But this is partly just what I've been noticing. And like you guys are probably all aware, I'm not coming at this from an academic angle. I am coming at this from a very anecdotal way. But yeah, as researchers, the other thing too is this work is very personal, and sometimes it can be hard to take these stories and distill it into statistics and numbers, which I do think kind of loses a little bit of the heart behind these experiences. I don't know if there's a way to bridge that, because they're just two different worlds, right? Storytelling and anecdotes and the facts and statistics. But I wonder if there's a way to get that information and bridge it so that people could understand it.
Thanks, Becky. We do have a small queue of questions, but before I get into that, I hope you oblige my one last query or curiosity. On TikTok, there are so many various trends that go viral overnight, and I think one of those that's really pertinent to the Halfie Project is the Asian check, where people talk about how white or how Asian they appear. The practice on TikTok is very simple for those of us who are not familiar. They focus on specific facial features or emblems in their home or cultural artifacts in their parents' houses. And it's a very short way to convey in 1 minute what it's like to live between two cultures. Now, your practice is very detailed, very ethnographic, very different in your storytelling and photography. How are you managing these two spaces with your original media of blogs and YouTube and podcasts versus this quick, snappy insights that we get into TikTok today?
Yeah. It comes down to also like with this question of like, I have my own personal feelings about it, but I also think it comes down a little bit to this idea of representation. Is all representation good, or is it better to have some representation versus nothing? Do you start somewhere, and then from there it sparks conversation, which then allows for greater awareness and understanding about mixed Koreanness? And I have to say, it is really difficult. That is really quite the crux of the matter for me, especially when it comes to wanting to expand to a greater audience, but also staying true to the full context behind these experiences that we share and the stories that we share and put out on the platform. Because it is very easy for us to tap into the 국제 couple trends. But I think that you lose a lot of the meaning behind it. So this is kind of like what I referred to before with trends will come and go. And I do hope that the Halfie project will remain consistency regardless to trends that come here and there. Yeah, I mean, I do think I feel personal distaste because I think it can feel very 2D compared to the fullness of these realities and experiences. But at the same time, maybe is that the best way to begin to be able to reach a wider audience to then further facilitate a deeper conversation. Yeah, but it is definitely a balance.
Thanks, Becky. We have a question that's a bit of food for thought. One of our attendees would like to know, is the phenomenon we're describing unique to mixed race Koreans in Korea? Or is this something that other mixed race peoples are also experiencing? What can we learn about these issues and concerns, maybe specific to your field as compared to elsewhere?
Yeah, exactly. So this is something I noticed this especially in the US. This blend of mixed race and just using this as kind of a blanket term when beneath mixed race, you have so many different cultures and ethnicities meeting together, and those experiences are extremely different. And this is, I think, why we were asked at the beginning with the Halfie Project, are you going to expand to include other people besides somebody who has connection to Korea? And I really did think about it because I thought, yeah, maybe, this is important to have this conversation. But then I realized if you embrace or accept everybody under this umbrella term, then suddenly there is no umbrella, there's no term to discuss. Everybody is part of it. And this isn't to keep people out, but purely just to be able to really focus on what actually is our topic at hand. And also, I don't think I have a strong enough connection or almost desire to learn about everything. The world is just too big for me to be a mouthpiece for that. And I will say, though, with my limited understandings, half Korean experiences or mixed Korean experiences, both ethnically and culturally, are very different and very unique. I think Korea is such a unique country and unique culture. And so when you have this kind of culture and country and history combined with so many other ethnic groups and other histories and cultures, it's no wonder we feel this really strong sense of clash. And that is why it's making our project so interesting, because we're trying to understand that. And the ultimate question that we are trying to answer is, what does it mean to be Korean? That's really the question that we've been hopefully trying to answer through our work and get people to think that without pressing our opinions on what it actually means. But yeah, Korea is definitely, I would say, a very unique case when it comes to mixed raceness.
Thanks, Becky. We have a long one. I'm going to distill this. This question says, your description, human-driven algorithms, makes them contemplate. They are sure you have some reservations about virality-centered algorithms, especially on TikTok. Do you have a personal wish on how you feel algorithms should work as a content creator? How do you want to reach out to your audiences to share these untold stories?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do think it is human-driven, but the human experience is incredibly diverse. And what interests a human is also incredibly diverse. I don't think there can be a perfect algorithm. I mean, in my ideal world, I would be able to reach out to people who genuinely care about what we are saying and genuinely are interested in our content, but that's impossible, and there is a careful balance between trying to break through the noise, because there are a lot of voices out there, versus staying true to what you actually want to say. And that's where the creativity part comes into play, I think. I don't know if I could ever have my own personal wish for an algorithm. That is beyond me. But the best thing that I can do is just trust that people are out there who have a similar mind and similar interest, and then be able to present these stories in a way that even when we do reach people who don't have a similar mind and who don't have the similar interest, to be able to explore these stories and experiences so different from them without feeling scared or feeling any judgment. That's part of education, right? So that you can open the doors to people who have never encountered you before. And then just continue the conversation from there. I used to think TikTok, or like being a content creator or being an influencer, I used to think of it almost like in a negative way. because I felt like it's dumbing down what we're actually trying to do. But it really isn't that way. And this is why I've changed my mind a little bit about TikTok as well. It's just another platform to reach other people. Yeah, you have to shape things a little bit differently, but that's where the creativity comes into play.
This one is from a follower. I follow you on YouTube. Congratulations on your wedding to Cedric. We're really excited. Congratulations, Rebecca. And also thank you for making the time so shortly after a momentous event to come and join us. This question is, I follow a lot of mixed race couples on YouTube, and sometimes they have very sensationalized ways of packaging their stories. How do you do yours? In the same way or differently? How do you feel about this trend on YouTube? Big one.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I know that we're kind of in a closed space, so I speak a little bit more frankly when I say that I sometimes think that's more detrimental than helpful. There are so many mixed Korean families and couples that have lived very successfully happy lives. But we also are fighting against the stereotypes that exist when it comes to mixed Korean couples, especially from the past with prostitution or camp towns or military wives or migrant families. And there is kind of this overlying shadow of negativity. And we forget sometimes that there are people who have navigated cultural barriers and language barriers to have very successful, happy homes and raise very successful, happy children. I do think, though, that so when I say that, it can sometimes be more harmful when we sensationalize these stories and we turn them into dramatic affairs. I think we forget that there are people living ordinary, happy lives, and that is ultimately the point about sharing these stories, to raise so much awareness that it's no longer an interesting fact, but just part of the everyday, normal understanding that there are people who live this way, who look like that, who act this way, and that we're all on the equal footing. Yeah, so, you know, I know that people enjoy it, and I know that it can maybe appear funny, but it can fall into the realm of exoticization, fetishization of things, which is antithetical to what we're trying to do.
Thanks, Becky. For those of us who are following along, I've also early on announced that we're doing a live tweet thread on Twitter or X. And for that reason, I've got a question that came in through DMs there. So let me read this. This person would say, this person is saying, it's very long, let me condense it. Thank you for sharing about the dark side of your craft and the story about the Korean church. If you were to go back and start over, would you do anything differently? Or how has this changed your practice now?
Oh my gosh, yes. There are so many things I would go back and have done differently. You know, because like I had said in my speech, learning to take myself and my opinion out of these stories has been the most difficult part of this project, because I do come in with, I have very strong opinions, you know, I have very strong feelings and my sense of this is right and this is wrong. And it is very hard to learn to separate, I guess, the artist from the art. Is it fully possible? I don't know. But that, I think, if I could go back, I would definitely have learned this faster if I could. Like, if I could really say, I shouldn't have said this, or your choice of words is so important when you're having these kind of conversations. How can I remove myself and my opinions out of this experience or story or education? Because I think sometimes that can harm more than help. Whether I mean to or not, I can sway someone's opinion or their thoughts about something instead of presenting the information as it is and letting them draw their own conclusions. So I really do think I could have handled some topics so much better, you know, if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now. Yeah.
We have 5 minutes to go, so I think I'm going to take just 2 more questions for us. This one sounds like it's connected to our conversation, so I'll go here. When you share stories on TikTok that may be a bit controversial, like issues to do with the Unification Church, are there things you are extremely careful about? How do you sway your passionate but easily swayed young audience? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think whenever we come in with a piece of information or a story that we do know could be potentially controversial, I always have to think about the way that you tell a story can be equally important to the actual story that you're telling. The way that I'm telling it, is this helpful or harmful to getting my actual point across? And so I always keep that in mind when I'm crafting a piece of content, especially with TikTok, because like you're correct, the viewers, I realize, can sometimes be a lot more impressionable than where we might find them elsewhere. Ultimately, my hope is that people see the content and they have their own thoughts about this, and then they feel safe enough to come and talk to us, leave comments, facilitate discussion. That is very, very key, because TikTok, the one video itself, is never going to give enough of that context. But it's just one way to touch and reach out to other people and then open those doors for further conversation.
Thanks, Becky. The last one is a big general one. What is next? Are you taking a break after your wedding? Will you continue to tell these stories? Are you going to make mixed-race children yourself? This is venturing into your territory. But if I can add to this question, I think I'll be very keen to know how you might parent your mixed-race children, knowing what you know and having lived your experience as a young person and young adult.
Yeah, I mean, lots of good questions there. What's coming next? I don't really know. We'll see. You know, people ask all the time, what do you want Halfie Project to be in 5 years? What do you see it in the future? And frankly, I actually feel very good with how we are doing things now. I would like to have more time to be able to invest in it, because I don't know if you're realizing it, but there's only 2 people behind this. We run everything, which is quite a lot. We definitely want to continue what we're doing and also continuing our own personal studies so that we can handle this in as knowledgeable manner as possible. I do hope that one day Halfie Project will just be in archives, you know, something that people can look back on, like a library. So, wow, these are the experiences. Wow, this is where my parents, this is how it lived, you know, this is how it's changed and come so far. But I'm sure that will be a long time in the future. As to kids, yeah, we are a little bit interesting, right? Because we have, well, our children will be both half Korean, but also mixed Black, white. We do wonder what can be done? Like, how can we help them understand and embrace their own identity and their connection with Korean culture? Because it is so important to us, and culture is passed down. It is taught. It is not through your genes or DNA, right? Culture is something that goes through your community or taught to you. And so I do feel that responsibility. I really want my kids to learn that, because I would like them to feel that security early on in being mixed Korean and being part of the Korean culture and community, so that they don't have to struggle the way that I did. But then I'm also a little conflicted on that too sometimes, right? Because I think maybe it is good to have a little bit of the struggle, you know, so that you can also learn for yourself and figure out for yourself who you are and where you fit in. I don't know, I'm still thinking about that, but ultimately I do know that we will just love them fully, and you don't separate between this is Black, this is white, this is Korean. You know, we hear that all the time growing up. Like, if you do something good, well, that's your Korean side. If you do something bad, oh, that's your other side. There's separation of who we are as people into your race or culture. And, you know, we all know that's BS. So I don't want our children to ever have to compartmentalize themselves. This is a good quality, this is a bad quality from this or that. But just whole as they are. This delves a little bit into my own theory about identity, what actually makes up a person. And I don't have time to get into it right now, but I did write about it on the blog. And it's just my own theory that I have. But I do think part of that identity is your self that you create for yourself. And then the other aspects are things that your parents teach you or your community teach you, or what you actually have, your physical features. And as parents, it is important that all of those pillars of identity are equally foundational, strong. So then when it does come to the exploration of the self, they can rely on those other pillars of identity as they're building that up through life.
Thanks, Becky. As a mixed race person myself, I felt every bit of everything you've shared. I think we can't thank you enough for not only being so sincere in your practice and sharing your story. From the comments and the questions, you can tell people are really appreciative of hearing about the dark side and the struggles of being a creator. And for us scholars, we're very grateful for the interventions you're making to the space. to learn about Korea on TikTok beyond K-pop, beyond what is popular, shiny in the entertainment industry. So if anything, we hope to continue following your journey, and we hope we continue the work that you do. Please join me in thanking Rebecca wherever you are around the world, and we will now take a short break. In 5 minutes' time, please rejoin us if you can for our fireside chat with 2 members from TikTok Korea to talk about what the phenomenon has been like in that local market. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 5 minutes.